What's up, guys? I know a lot of you ask us questions, would you rather be feared or loved? But I want both. I want you guys to be afraid of how much you love our podcast.
Yeah, and if you guys have been following along to a certain show, then you know exactly where that's from, and that's from The Office.
Yeah, 9 seasons long, 201 episodes, I believe. It was the first of its kind, inspired Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a few different spin-off of these kind of documentary style, fictional reality comedies.
Yeah, and for me, I personally, truly have been watching The Office for a long time. I think I watched the first or the second episode first. I remember just because of how polarizing it was, the diversity training one, and was hooked ever since. And Julian, where did you start with watching The Office?
I caught the safety episode or the fire episode after a Super Bowl one time. And it was right in the middle of Dwight heating up the handles to all of the escape routes and seeing how responsive they were to their fire drill or fire protocol.
Yeah, and I think episodes like that are just a what the hell is going on, especially if you don't know the characters. People haven't been played out for you or introduced to you, and you're just getting thrown in there. It's kind of amplifies the joking and almost the satire of The Office and how all of these people are absolute caricatures.
Yeah, and it's really unique how they all work together and mesh so well, and the friendship goes beyond the show from what we've seen. And it's just, the diversity in character types and the acting styles and how it was written, everything comes together for a really great time.
And so for those of the listeners that don't know exactly what The Office is and haven't watched it, how could you describe it?
Well, the one we'll be talking about is the U.S. Office. Originally there was the U.K. Office or the original Office. And it basically takes place in, a paper company, a cubicle office style with a very extravagant, leader and some interesting characters playing pranks and doing, things that are somewhat relatable to the real life workforce.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good, surmising of what The Office is just at the first glance. And then when you kind of, get more comfortable with what's going on in it, you find that, it's all very foreign, but at the same time feels pretty natural.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it.
I would say it's very evergreen. You can watch it, it ran from 2005 to 2013, but you can watch it now and relate to everything that's going on in there, whether you're in an office job, you're in your first job, you have friends like this. There's a lot of things that connect with you and you can see in different characters, or, everyone wants to be Jim, or everyone thinks, they have a boss that's like Michael or something along that lines.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that personally, if I worked there, I would hate it just because of how horrible, the work conditions are. Not like they're working in a sweatshop, but as in the unpredictability and the sporadicness of, the supervisors as far as Michael goes. And then just having to work around these big personalities like Dwight and, you have Andy,
Stanley.
Stanley, it's just and Kelly, just so many people that, just bring it in The Office. And I think that's what makes it such a strong show and such a poor idea of real life.
Yeah. And what do you think, makes Michael Scott? I've seen a lot of the tendencies in different jobs I've worked in, but the culmination of what is Michael Scott is something that's just almost hard to fathom without watching the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could describe it, I think Michael Scott is somebody who fully commits to believing in himself, regardless of the circumstance, without question of doubt at all.
It's intriguing. Whoever wrote for the show did a very good job, or Steve Carell's input to what they improvise and, how they built the character. But I'm not sure if Michael Scott he seems almost like the character that, out of high school or first year of college just went straight to the workforce and this kind of worked his way up to where he's at without the real proper job or boss training. He's trying to be the cool guy or the fun boss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone can relate to that person where they work, or maybe they see this in themselves where, the level of skill or ability required for that job increased before that person had that level of skill or ability. And so you have this quirkiness of, this person who acts not how they should be acting, and it leads to very interesting experiences.
Yeah, and some of the interesting to me about The Office is that the first season wasn't extremely well received, probably because it took a little bit to learn, is first of its kind, kind of really going into that realm. So it probably took people a little bit to hang on to, but after that, it slowly picked up its pace and just started moving.
Yeah, exactly. And you can kind of see it by, there's actually been some star power that's came through The Office. Obviously, Steve Carell's the main one. John Krasinski. There's also people like Idris Elba and Will Ferrell who've been in The Office that you're like, what?
Yeah, and you had like Odenkirk was in there for a while. I mean, Ed Helms is doing really well. And this was all at the start of their career, so you kind of see a good progression. Like The Office, where Michael Scott, Steve Carell, like his really coming out party was 40-Year-Old Virgin, and he was on The Office before that. So you kind of see the growth of these actors throughout the show as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there was a favorite episode for you, Julian, which one would it be?
Season 1, episode 5, basketball. I don't know why I find it so funny, but maybe because I played basketball and understanding like the jobs I've worked in, people always ask me about basketball. So I picture some of the games to be like how they play in their warehouse and Stanley wearing the full jumpsuit.
Yeah, that was a very good one. And it also describes just kind of the naivety of Michael Scott. And the thing that really stands out to me in that episode is how he absolutely believes that Stanley can play basketball and refuses to, doesn't want Kevin, doesn't saving Oscar for baseball season, like just stuff like that. That's just like, what the hell?
And then you're still warming up to Dwight at this point, right? Mr. Schroot's a character that goes throughout the season, but shows up to the basketball game and is wearing, the headband and face mask.
With the anime t-shirt and then starts talking crap to the lady in the warehouse.
Yeah, and you get to see Jim throw one of the nicest, I think it's Jim throws one of the nicest passes in basketball history, or saves it. It's just a fun episode. It was one of the ones that kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So one that stands out for me is kind of like the one that I first started on is Diversity Day, diversity training. And the thing that is super hilarious is that, and it's a little relatable to me. So there's a guy named Mr. Brown that comes into the office and is that diversity trainer. And so he's doing this, and Michael is, just being Michael. And at one point, Michael asks, what's this guy's name? In the middle of the meeting, and he's like, you can call me Mr. Brown. Michael laughs and says, first test, I will not call you that. Even though that's his name. I love that part.
I think it's, in perspective, it's kind of, early 2000s, 2004, like diversity is really kind of starting to come its way. So it's like, ahead of the game. And I think it's something both you and I have come across or heard about in the workforce, is this diversity training. And, I would assume in Pennsylvania where they, have this set up, or other places that diversity training is very unique. And you have someone embodying it like Michael Scott take it to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of like, it gives a reprieve from people of their own office or work life, just knowing, like, it's always nice to know that it's worse somewhere else. And granted, it could be fake and totally fabricated, but it's just I think it's relieving the show itself.
And I think the other thing the show does really well, if you haven't seen it, is the relationship between Dwight and Jim. you can tell that in some weird way they care for each other or try and help each other out. But at the same time, some of the pranks that they pull are incredibly funny. Like, I don't usually laugh out loud at shows, but there's multiple times, even through rewatching, that I'll just laugh out loud.
Yeah, is there one that particularly you enjoy the most?
The one where Jim gift wraps Dwight's desk and chair and everything, but nothing's really there. So when Dwight goes to sit down, it all just falls apart and falls through. Extremely clever, and just the amount of work that takes to do that, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, truly, it's almost insane to see the level of pranks, or like the level of pranking that goes on. There's been impersonations before. There's been self-inflicted pranks to prank the other person. Like, it's kind of extraordinary the lengths that these guys will go to like, one up the other.
I wonder what it was like on set. Like, obviously, Dwight has to act out, or Rainn Wilson has to act out these pranks, but like the reaction they give is like almost seems 100% authentic, and it just seems like a great time during those episodes where those highly extreme pranks are going on, that everyone's just having a great time.
Yeah, and I think there's evidence of that just by how the actors act outside of now not acting in the office and not being, friends or coworkers in it. They still spend time with each other, and you could see that through social media, and so you could tell that the chemistry was there, and I think that's what helps it, or help The Office become what it is.
What was your favorite prank in the saga of Jim and Dwight?
One that I really enjoyed personally, and it wasn't like the exact actual prank that I think I enjoyed the most, but there was a part where Jim and Dwight were having a snowball fight, and like how it started, Jim threw a snowball at Dwight in the office building because he called the snow a dusting. And then Dwight challenged him to a snowball fight. Dwight took it like really far. And then there was one point where Dwight pranked Jim by impersonating a gift from his wife, and opening it. It was a snowball mechanism that flung in his face. And then the next scene, which is the funniest to me, is Dwight's showcasing of the multiple wigs that he has at the office. And, he has the Meredith one where it's just like this short little bob redhead cut on Dwight's head. But I'd lose it every time I see it.
It reminds me of, if you guys are familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants, where SpongeBob and Patrick start this snowball fight with Squidward, and Squidward goes overboard and makes, the giant fortress, and is waiting and trying to get his best shot. And really good dynamic. Doesn't he put snowmen in the parking lot too?
Yeah, Dwight does. And it's like it's a total psychological, and even says it. He's like, maybe the greatest snowball is fear.
And then Dwight, I think arguably Dwight is the most important character in The Office, and one of my favorites. His relationship with Michael has always been something very unique.
Yeah, so I would describe it as Dwight is probably a sycophant, or like very obsequious to Michael, and the fact of he's trying to be very ingratiating. So, he's very there for Michael, very, very present. Like, he'll do things that are just absolutely above and beyond, like from, I don't know what, like, like having a fan wave like on his foot.
When he takes the blame for Michael's great Willy Wonka idea, and then Dwight really takes it and is like, yeah, I did it. It was me. And Michael gets upset about it.
Yeah.
I also like, I don't know if it's necessarily related to their relationship, but when Michael likes to wake up with the fresh smell of bacon, I think it's bacon, and burns his foot on the griddle in the morning. That whoever wrote that is a genius, because I wouldn't do it, but it was extremely funny.
Yeah, exactly. And how Dwight suffers that concussion and just a whole bunch of other stuff that, it's just like such wild and harebrained ideas that they execute so well on that show.
Like, I don't know who was like, Dwight Schrute is going to have a gnarly beet farm. Like, I don't know where that came from, but they worked it to a T.
Yeah, absolutely. In the stay of Jim and Pam on Schrute Farms, it's just like, from the bedtime stories to the, I think they did like beat like, relish or something making.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something good there too, is the Jim and Pam's relationship, right? Like in the first couple seasons, you're like, oh, they're definitely a thing. But you can't ever tell, if they're going to get together. And then you have obviously the moments where they do get together. And I think there's some pretty funny things that happen throughout that course as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of those relationships that everyone wanted to happen eventually. And, I think the fate will, or the crowd willed it to happen. And it's a really feel-good story, I feel like. They deserved each other almost.
Yeah, I think the one thing I just realized we skipped over is it's a documentary. Like, the reason why The Office is thing is like technically they're being filmed for like, a documentary, which you kind of lose sight of like somewhere in the middle. And in the end, that's how they kind of wrap it into that it's a documentary. And I kind of forgot about that part, which is very interesting, but Stanley seems to have a very big problem with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously when you're, when the guy's trying to, get his man's trying to eat out here more than his fair share. Yeah. And so that's but also, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, I think Dwight's had a problem with it, Michael's had a problem with it, obviously Angela's had a problem with it, Oscar has had issues with the cameras.
I think, you were mentioning too, the supporting cast is like, it's not really a supporting cast. They're all like main characters in their own way. And they're all so unique and different. And like Angela compared to Creed, or Creed compared to Andy or Toby.
Yeah, seriously, it's insane the level of depth that each character is colored with and, seemingly gets to share in the limelight, and the fact that, everyone is very well portrayed, in the fact that, nobody's underrepresented, I don't think. And even the ones that are, I would say Toby technically is, but it's like nobody gives a shit. So it's better that way.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like the one character that's always unique to me is Creed. And we read something that Creed's character is based on the actor who played Creed was in a band called the Grassroots. And Creed's character is based on the Creed as a band member, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting that, and Creed is one of those guys who are very cryptic and almost an enigma in the fact that you never really know where he's at as far as his head goes. Sometimes physically, it's just he's always the mystery. But to know that he almost plays himself in a way is even more puzzling.
And the thing I heard is he originally tried out for this position as Michael Scott, and during the auditioning or the casting, he was so obscure that the casting director had to go, yeah, you need a spot in this show.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you see that a lot of the time too. I mean, we have Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight, originally, auditioned for, Michael Scott as well as Jim Halpert. So it's kind of interesting. You see that these get on the producers of, finding these talents and finding the right spots for them, even if they really, weren't intending to be in that spot in the first place.
Yeah, and in terms of finding talent, Phyllis apparently was a casting director for the show who would read lines during the audition. So if you need a female voice in your auditioning, you're going to have a female read it to you. So she took that part, and during that process, the producers and directors said, the way you read lines, you fit into this show perfectly, so we're going to give you this role or fit you into this role.
Yeah, and talk about talents. I mean, there's multiple people on the show. You have BJ Novak, who is an actor in the show that also writes, as well as other people that contribute to The Office, the TV show, more than just acting on the screen. And it's just very, very interesting and cool to know of that level of talent that's on it.
Yeah, and one thing that was most shocking to me is you look at where Jim Halpert or John Krasinski is now, when he just came out with A Quiet Place that did very well. But I didn't know he shot the intro scene into The Office. I don't know why. Maybe he was interested, but I've always wondered why the intro scene was kind of filmed the way it was. And Jim Halpert, that was the filmer.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he was doing some character building in Scranton, PA himself, and tried to really channel it, and that's how it happened. But still, very interesting. Kind of the obscure things of The Office that normal people wouldn't know, but it would take some digging to find out.
Yeah, and I think the term "that's what she said" was really spurred on by The Office.
Lord. Yeah, that was a huge... Honestly, if something was to have made an impression on me, the most, it's probably the phrase, "that's what she said." Obviously wielded heavily when I was younger, in my younger days. And now it's still, a good tool for comedic reprieve.
Yeah. Once again, Michael Scott, I don't know how much was improv or what it was, but he was just wielding some phrases around, or he just had some quotes that really, I don't know where they came from or who wrote them, but they were great. Do you have any quotes that come to mind for you?
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Exactly. I don't know whose idea was to take someone else's quote, and then Michael Scott would put his name under there.
Yeah.
Worked perfectly. I like the one, I don't know if it's culturally appropriate anymore, but the one where he talks about your friends you don't call friends retarded when
he says no, you don't call, basically saying you don't call mentally, cognitively disabled people retarded. You call your friends retarded when they're acting. Yeah, it's just really bad.
Yeah, he's super good-hearted. I guess another one that comes up to me, which Jordan and I kind of talked about a little before, but someone wrote a line that Michael Scott walks into the office and loudly yells, "I declare bankruptcy," as if that's how you declare bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of helps solidify my idea of Michael Scott as in this guy who unwaveringly does not question his compass inside of his own head, and wondering if that compass is off skew a little bit, and has the truest intentions, but also has the truest deficiencies and holes in his understanding of the world.
And that can be shown when he thinks it's a good idea to go start his own company, which doesn't turn out very well. Works at a call center, which is a very unique series of events. But kind of in closing, what do you think about the rumor about them coming back with The Office with a mix of new and old characters?
So I've heard of that rumor, and from the last I heard of it, it was false. But let's just say in this hypothetical podcast that it was true. I'd be pretty eager to see kind of how they do that. Because, I mean, with a lot of things, I'm going to give movies as an example. The original is always probably better than the sequel. And so I think that as The Office is being such a bona fide and well-followed thing, it would take a lot for them to have something that meets the standard of the original. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, the rumor is that Steve Carell wouldn't be in it. I would assume John Krasinski probably wouldn't be in it. And maybe a few other characters, or maybe, maybe it's just Steve Carell is not in it, and you have, but I guess Jim's in Philadelphia, so it'd be a weird dynamic there. But yeah, I agree. I don't know if it should try to be retouched. It was just so timely at the time and appropriately written, and just kind of, the first in the door just killed it. I don't want to see a legacy of a new Office and it just kind of, ruins it. Or
yeah. One thing that I would be open to is maybe a Dwight spinoff or something. That would be something I probably could get down to, but that would be, I would think, better than a recreation of The Office itself, because Dwight is such a character that him really well, but at the same time, you don't.
Jim and Angela's Beet Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen The Office, I would definitely give it a shot. The weird thing is there is a loose storyline, but realistically, you could pretty much jump into any episode you wanted to see if you enjoyed it and then restart. It's easy to watch. The episodes are 20 to some of them. The longer ones are 40 minutes, but mostly 22 minutes. It's on Netflix. It's probably on Hulu. It's probably on a ton of different places. So it's out there for you to watch if you're looking for a new comedy.
Yeah, exactly. I would say give it a watch, and it's worth just a couple episodes, and I mean it's just good laughs, really.
Yeah, if you like The Office or you have other, comedies or TV shows you're interested in or think we might be interested in, shoot us an email at theoffthetoppodcast@gmail.com. We're on 12 platforms from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iTunes, a ton of different places. So you know where to find us. Any closing words?
No. Thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate it.
Bears beats.
Battlestar Galactica.
Later.